Hey, 139. When last you saw us, if you follow this fucking show, I had just tipped over a chair in the because I was pissed at Lance equating plutonium with uranium. So before we start arguing again, I wanted to do a quick tutorial on exploding elements, which are our most exploding common elements are uranium and plutonium. The deal is that atomic nuclei, the little fucking specks at the center of every atom, are, unless they're hydrogen, are made of protons and neutrons. Protons repel each other. They want to get away from each other, but protons and neutrons are attracted to each other. So it takes the neutrons are the glue that keep the protons in the nucleus until you get up to the size of a uranium nucleus has 92 protons, and a plutonium has 94 protons, and that's right at the last stable point, the point at which you can't keep them together very long, even by adding like 150 neutrons in there they're unstable. And so the uranium is the heaviest element that exists in nature because some forms of uranium have a half-life of like 4 billion years. They don't decay very fast. And then plutonium, I don't know, has a half-life of maybe 10,000 years, I don't know. But the deal is that for bombs, you want the forms of uranium and plutonium that are on a hair trigger. Because for a bomb, you want every atom in your bomb to go off, to split into. The way you get energy out of an explosion is these big fat uranium plutonium nuclei that are barely holding together. If you can throw a neutron into them and make them break apart, they break into two tighter elements that it takes less energy to hold them together, and that excess energy is your bomb energy. It spits out neutrons, and those neutrons break other nuclei apart. So in a good bomb, you're breaking all the nuclei apart in like a trillionth of a second. And so they all get busted up, and all this energy is released, and then you have your explodey stuff. In a nuclear reactor, you don't want shit to happen so fast because you don't want your reactor to turn into a bomb. So you use different distributions of the radioactive shit and different isotopes, different nuclei with different numbers of neutrons. So you have a controllable reaction that releases energy, but slow enough that you can keep on top of it. You don't get a meltdown or an explosion. So that's the deal. That you have different. An isotope of an element is an element with the same number of protons but different numbers of neutrons that have different properties. The main element, like the simplest one is hydrogen, which has one proton. But an isotope of hydrogen has a proton and a neutron, or a proton and two neutrons. And those are the isotopes because they have different numbers of neutrons. And you could probably even do a proton and 3 neutrons, but that thing would last a millionth of a second before it flies apart. So you have semi-stable isotopes, and then you have explodey, break-aparty, decay isotopes. So for bombs and for reactors, you want the isotopes that are going to behave the way you want for that purpose. All right, now we can start talking about, after I went home and I did some homework on what Hillary did with plutonium, and the documents she signed was this U.S.-Russia plutonium reduction pact that they started negotiating it at the beginning of the Bush-Cheney presidency, because the Soviet Union falls 10 years before. And now it's Russia, and its satellite nations are sitting on a bunch of nuclear warheads. At the peak, they had 6,000 nuclear warheads. The U.S. had 6,000 nuclear warheads. And now that Russia's a smaller country, everybody's nervous, and just nervous in general, about there being so many nuclear warheads in the world. So for 10 years, they've been negotiating getting rid of these warheads and also the nuclear material that had gone into the warheads. So after 10 years, started negotiating in like 2001. In 2010, Hillary Clinton and her Russian counterpart were ready to sign this treaty that that each side would destroy 17 metric tons, that's 37,500 pounds of plutonium, mostly by burning it in nuclear reactors, turning it into stuff that can't be used for bombs. And so that was the deal. It wasn't that Hillary was selling plutonium to anybody. It was that she and the U.S. and Russia, after 10 years of negotiations, came up with a treaty to burn off all this weapons-grade plutonium and turn it into plutonium that was safer, that couldn't be used for bombs, that even if it fell into bad guys' hands, wouldn't be used for bombs. So that was the plutonium thing, which is so even though uranium-1 is bullshit, it has nothing to do with the fucking plutonium deal. However, I don't think your side knows very much physics.
I'm not, or if you want to go on, go ahead.
All right, so I'm going to get to my point, because if looking at that plutonium deal, which nobody got pissed off about, because it's a good deal, reducing plutonium, getting rid of dangerous exploding plutonium. I found a couple things that if I were a conservative, if I wanted to make Hillary look bad, I think I'd be able to cherry pick some shit and say, well, look what Hillary did when she signed this treaty. And the one thing she did was she signed a treaty that means that the U.S. is getting rid of a bunch of our plutonium. And you could argue, well, yeah, we're getting rid of our plutonium, but how do we know that Russia's getting rid of their plutonium? So they missed that. And the other thing they missed is that Russia wants to burn its weapons-grade plutonium in something called a breeder reactor. And a breeder reactor takes plutonium or uranium and makes more fissile material. Fissile means fission, means breaking shit apart, because you get your energy when you break these nuclei apart into smaller nuclei. So like Russia, part of the deal was that they wanted to burn their plutonium in a way that would make more plutonium. So that's what fucking Hannity should be yelling about. That Hillary signed a deal that might leave Russia with, and Russia's supposed to be supervised, so they don't, make more weapons-grade plutonium. But Hillary signed a deal that has the potential to leave Russia with more plutonium than they started with. Which makes me think you guys don't know physics, because I don't think it's an actual, the part of the treaty is to keep an eye on this shit, but why aren't you guys yelling about that instead of this uranium-1 deal, which is just ridiculous?
All right, so I found an article where, and this is where it, all right, so here's what the nuts and bolts of the whole thing are. It all started out as the cover for the whole thing was that the U.S. and Russia would dispose of some of their uranium and plutonium. Okay?
Well, plutonium. The deal was with
Okay.
17
But,
metric tons of
and
piece.
by the way, you make plutonium from uranium.
Yes.
So when somebody says uranium one, the uranium one deal, this is what I was trying to explain to you last week. The uranium one deal is the name of the company. The company is called Uranium One.
Yeah.
Okay, and they
But
they deal in plutonium and uranium. Okay, so what happened was, it started off with the idea of disposing of this weapons grade plutonium, whatever. Well, what happens is this. There was a lobbyist for the Uranium One company was Tony Podesta. You know who Tony Podesta was?
roughly.
All right. The Podesta brothers, and I don't know which one it was, they were Hillary Clinton's campaign managers. They controlled Hillary
Okay.
Clinton's campaign. In fact, when Hillary Clinton was probably too drunk to come down and accept her defeat,
on
the
election
concession
night.
speech on election night, it was one of the Podesta brothers that came down and sort of tried to talk to the crowd for her. Anyway, he was a lobbyist for this company, Uranium One, which then melded into Rosatom. Rosatom is the Russian uranium company.
Mhm.
Okay, Rosatom and the U.S. were getting together to try to dispose of this plutonium, but afterwards, in 2013, their goal was to get 20 to 25% of U.S. uranium so that they could, I don't know what the word is, they work with it somehow. They
enrich it.
They enrich it,
Oh,
yeah.
So let's
yeah.
just, okay, the deal is, all right. So exploding uranium and not exploding uranium differ in weight by slightly more than 1%. One's U-238, the other's U-235. So you enrich, the 235 is the unstable shit. It needs a few more neutrons in there to keep it, make it less exploding. So the way you enrich it, the more U-235 you have in your mix, the more exploding your mix is. And so you enrich uranium by spinning it in centrifuges. We've argued about fucking Iran centrifuges endlessly. You spin it for a long time until the lighter exploding uranium kind of floats to the top, the way, cream floats to the top, in olden days when you're churning butter. So that's what you're doing. You're enriching. When you say in working with it. So you need to enrich it for two reasons. One is to make it explodey enough to work in a nuclear reactor. And then if you want to take it further, it's explodey enough to make a bomb.
Okay, well, so according to this, after 2013...
What is this? Who's writing this?
These are a series of documents that were signed. These are actual copies. They're not the whole contracts, which are much longer, but these are excerpts from the contract. Rosatom, after 2013, Rosatom would like to have 20 to 25% of the U.S. SWU, that means the separative work units per year, 20 to 25% of the uranium market. And it needs assurances that U.S. trade laws will not be used to block Rosatom uranium sales in the United States. Okay, so in other words, the U.S. will sell this uranium to Rosatom. So all you're doing is proving my point.
Well, not really.
And when I say SWU, that means separative work units of uranium.
All right, so we've talked about this, but let's to reiterate. Uranium that is mined, the U.S. is, uranium is found all around the world, but the U.S. doesn't have that much uranium that's mineable, at least that we've found. So the U.S. only mines 8% of the uranium that it uses. We import 92% of it. Now the 8%, so the deal, the Rosatom deal, is for 20% of the 8%, or the equivalent of 1.6% of the uranium used in the U.S. And that uranium is not allowed to leave the U.S., except it's allowed to go make a round trip to Canada for some of its enrichment. And the enrichment is mostly for use in reactors. Because when people thought of uranium as rare and precious, because we barely had enough at the end of World War II to make a bomb out of uranium. One bomb, well, two bombs, one to test it in New Mexico and one to drop on Hiroshima. But since then, the world uranium production and use has skyrocketed for use mostly in nuclear reactors. So the annual use of uranium is 150 million pounds, 66.5 thousand metric tons. So, and it takes, you could build a nuclear bomb with less than 100 pounds of this stuff. So it's not like we're using 150 million pounds of it. It's not like it's so precious that, we couldn't, if we needed to make one more bomb, we couldn't come up with, 95 pounds of it.
Okay, well, I just want to continue just with,
Okay.
one point now that you've said all that. The uranium that went to Rosatom, that was the whole point, was that it was going to Canada, but the problem is Rosatom bought this company, which was originally Canadian. So, and then from there, the uranium was going to Russia and Europe. And that's the problem, is that up until now, U.S. laws prevented U.S. uranium from going to Russia. After Hillary Clinton got involved, this uranium would then go to Canada, which Rosatom, Uranium One was a Canadian company that was bought by the Russian company, and then the uranium started going to Russia. Now, you may not be concerned about that, but for the entire Cold War, we were prevented from sending any of our uranium to Russia. It turns out that the countries that have the most uranium are Kazakhstan, Russia, Canada, I think Australia, and then somewhere down the list, 6th or 7th, is the US. We don't have as much as they do, and now 20 to 25% of ours was legally granted to go to Russia, and that's what the problem is.
Except that we're bringing in 92% of what we use.
Well, we may be doing that, but my problem is that I don't want the American uranium going to Russia. I don't want it any more this week than I did last week. So, I don't know. It's good that you did research, but and now I'm even more concerned because I don't understand why Tony Podesta was the lobbyist. It says here his company received $250,000 to lobby to make sure that for Uranium One, the Russian company.
All right, so just to be clear,
the Podesta Group received $250,000 from a Russian uranium company, and then went on to be the campaign managers for Hillary Clinton.
All right, so
it's worse than I thought.
All right, so yeah, last week when we got super pissy, me especially, Hillary's signature is on, as Secretary of State, is on this plutonium document.
Okay.
There's no signature of Hillary Clinton on any of the documents pertaining to this deal that grants 20% of the uranium mined in the U.S. to puts it under the auspices of, if you want to, I'm not sure that's entirely accurate, puts it under the auspices of Rosatom.
Yes. No, that's the problem.
No,
is that if, according to these documents, that was part of the. Okay, this is the document from the UN Institute for Disarmament Research. It says here that Rosatom would be interested in doing this 20 to 25%. And here's the problem. This is how you're being confused. They started off with a deal that was going to dispose of this plutonium, a laudable goal. But then shoved into the deal was this little plan to start giving uranium to Rosatom. And she signed that.
She did.
Otherwise, they couldn't get it.
So you're saying that in this in the plutonium thing?
No,
you're inferring this.
No, well, it just says right here. Okay, so they won't continue after 2/3. Okay.
So what is this?
This is part of the negotiation.
Yeah, but this isn't the
Okay.
this isn't the document that Hillary signed.
Here. Rosatom after 2013 would be interested in having a 20 to 25%. You can read.
But
that.
again, this isn't the document Hillary signed.
But this is part of the document right here. Here's the here.
Yeah, but this is just a bunch of different documents, none of which were signed by Hillary.
Yeah, they wouldn't have done the deal at all if this wasn't put in. If these considerations were not
Can we
put
shut
in.
this off for just a sec so I can read this whole thing?
Real quick, wasn't there something more to the story in terms of the Clinton Foundation or something like that?
Well, I mean, as I've said, thank you, Director, as I've said every single week, whenever we talk about this for the past 3 years, the Clinton Foundation received $145 million while these negotiations were going on. And
from a guy who was formerly associated with
he says he was formerly
no,
associated,
that's fine.
but I don't take his word for it.
Okay, that's
Sorry.
fine. But anyway, we got to break and you have to let me read this
Okay,
because you spent 10 minutes waiting.
Well, here's the thing. You can read this, but it takes a long time and it's very complicated.
I'm fast at this
Okay.
shit.
And let me just, before you go on, because the audience wants to know what my standpoint is, and you just talked for a long time.
That's true.
The problem we're having right now is that I found a signature on a document stating that Hillary, I believed, would be sending 20 to 25% of our uranium to a company called Rosatom.
No, hold on.
Now, wait.
No, you got to hold on because you found Hillary's signature on a document pertaining to plutonium from 2010.
Okay.
Now, this other shit is happening 3 years later.
3 years later was when the next phase would go in, that they would start mining our uranium. They'd start getting our uranium, buying it from us, and keeping it.
That didn't have anything to do with that
No,
document.
it was part of the same deal.
You got to show me that.
No, I don't. Because, Rick, I have to tell you something. This is why I'm getting frustrated, too. Now, I don't throw chairs, but I do get frustrated.
I tipped over the chair. It was barely wasn't throwing.
Okay. Now, listen, and you got to non-interrupt me.
Okay.
All right. Now, Rick is living in a fantasy world where Hillary Clinton signed a deal with Rosatom, but it's not the deal he thinks or wants her to have signed. Okay? And what I'm saying is, I have read now probably 10 documents. Somewhere in these documents, better lawyers than I have found her signature on a document saying that 20 to 25% of our uranium will be available to Rosatom, apparently starting in 2013. Now, don't you interrupt me. Don't you interrupt me. Now, my problem with Rick is I'm kind of done with this. I've seen her signature. I've seen the documents. I've even seen documents about the documents. I am now convinced that she signed this deal. Don't you interrupt me, okay? Now, I can't, Rick is at a point right now in what I believe a fantasy world where I'm going to have to produce signatures on documents for every single thing that I say from now on.
Just one.
No,
Just one.
don't you interrupt me. If I say that the U.S. won World War II, I am not going to provide Rick with a document with the admiral from Germany and the American general saying that they officially surrendered.
But you could.
No, I
It
could,
exists.
and I could find a document with Hillary's signature on it, giving this. I could probably, with the Freedom of Information Act, get the whole contract sent to me. But Rick, don't interrupt me. I'm not going to do that because this is now beyond the scope of our show. I am not going to find her signature on every single document. I'm not going to back up I'm not going to find, for example, a document between the Confederate States of America and the United States of America showing that Jeff Davis has officially surrendered.
But you could.
No. And you
It
could.
exists.
Yeah, and I'm telling you that I've now found her signature. I have found a document. Last week you said plutonium is different from uranium.
It is.
It now turns out that the deal was for uranium-1 to deal with our plutonium.
We'll see when we break and I
No,
read
no,
that.
no. Oh,
You
well,
say
yeah.
this makes the point, right?
It
So
does make that
if it's
point.
in there, then I'll see it.
It does, but my point is that just because you can't find, just because I'm not going to spend the rest of the week trying to find that document doesn't mean it didn't happen. I found enough Clinton signatures that are both Clinton and Rosatom in the year 2010 to convince me. And if you're not convinced, it's because you don't want to be convinced.
How many signatures did you find? I've seen one.
I found another one just now. It took me a half an hour, but I did find one. Here's her signature again.
All right, so should we break and let me read this?
No. Wait, before we do, I need to show you her signature again. There it is. Okay? Here. For the camera, here is a protocol. All right, here's what it says. This is August 29th. Protocol of agreement between the U.S. and Russia, the management of disposition of plutonium. Okay? Now this is a plutonium deal signed April 2010. Clinton signed it. And the idea ostensibly is to get rid of excess plutonium. Okay? But this deal goes on to involve Rosatom and a consideration to get some of our uranium to use. Now you can read this.
All right, so let's break because I got to read it.
Okay.
I think we should have closing arguments on this, and we got so much more to cover.
All right, okay, but just shut it down for a sec so I can
right.
read this shit. Okay, so I looked through the thing, and there's nothing in the 2010 agreement. This long string of tweets, because you're looking at a tweet string from somebody who's done some analysis. And there's nothing in this long string of tweet that shows, there's nothing in the 2010 agreement that Hillary signed. And
It says right here. It explicitly states that Rosatom, after 2013.
But this isn't the document that Hillary
This
signed.
is the whole document.
It's not. It's not.
This
This
is
is
the
analysis.
document.
It's not. Look, go back
Now
up.
look, this is part of the document. Here it is.
It's not. This is a piece of analysis from the
No,
Department of Defense.
no, these,
Look, I mean, click on that. This document is from the United. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not from the Department of Defense. It's from the United Nations doing analysis.
but it's analyzing the document that states that they want the 25%. Disposition of excess Russian weapons plutonium. Okay? Now I have to read this whole thing.
Yeah, but this is not what Hillary signed. And the
No,
actual document.
It does.
It doesn't. It's not a different document. Her signature is not on it. It's analysis from not even the U.S. government. It's from the United Nations.
This is the analysis of the contract.
Some experts believe.
Under the deal, Russia supplied about 5 million separate units of uranium to the U.S. Okay? After 2013, Rosatom would like to have 25% of the U.S. market, and it needs assurances that U.S. trade laws will not be used to block Rosatom.
But that's not in the treaty.
It is. This is an analysis of the treaty. This is the Center for Arms Control and Energy and Environmental Studies.
This is 2 years later.
Yes, they're analyzing the treaty.
Go back. What's the name of this thing? Disposition of excess Russian weapons and plutonium.
Right. The Center for Arms Control, Energy and Environmental Studies. Anatoly Dyakov.
All right, so now I got to just read the abstract here. Today there are hundreds of tons of highly enriched uranium and separated
turn
plutonium.
the camera off. Turn the camera off.
Sure, turn it off.
Rick needs to be
Off.
convinced. Yeah, turn it off.
So this is 2 years after the deal was signed. This is an analysis from the United Nations. And they say some experts believe that sales of an enrichment service is more important to Rosatom than uranium sales. That is, that they want to make, I guess, some money off of enriching uranium rather than selling uranium. Russia wants to get commercial access to the U.S. enrichment market after 2013. That is, they want to be in the business of pumping up our uranium, making it more explodey so we can use it in reactors. While Russian sales of enrichment services to the United States are currently blocked, under the Hillary deal, Russia supplied about 5.5 million work units per year to the U.S. That is whatever units of enrichment, that is Rosatom or supplied 44% of the U.S. utility requirements. After 2013, Rosatom would like to have 20 to 25% of the U.S. market.
Of the uranium.
And it needs assurances that U.S. trade laws will not be used to block Rosatom sales in the U.S. That is, Rosatom.
Yeah, the Rosatom.
Not to Russia. Russia wants to enrich our uranium for us to use.
No. What's going to happen is the sale is the sale of our uranium to them so that they can enrich it. When it says U.S. sales, it's not for us to sell back to them. It's them selling. It's us selling our uranium to them for them to have, which they will then enrich.
Words, no,
they still
read
have
the fucking words.
Yeah,
U.S. trade laws will not be used to block Rosatom enrichment sales in the U.S. That is, look at. I mean, those are the fucking words. Under the deal, the deal that Hillary signed, Rosatom would sell us 44% of the enriched uranium we need to run our reactors.
Okay.
And after 2013, Rosatom would like to have a quarter, 20 to 25% of the market to sell us uranium that we need. So,
it's our sales of our uranium to them so they can so that they can enrich it,
and sell it back to us,
or not. That's the whole point. They will get our uranium out of our mines into their country. That's what we're trying to prevent, because we don't trust the Ruskies.
Well, there's so many other reasons to not trust them. This uranium,
until now,
but the whole deal is.
And up until now, U.S. trade laws have prevented that because we don't trust the Russians getting our uranium.
So let me say that if you go online, you can see that Uranium One, the idea that Hillary, you found me one Hillary signature, and this is not in the original deal. This is an analysis
of the deal by the UN, who has no reason to lie.
No, but they're saying that.
So now the UN is lying.
No, I'm not. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that any kind of uranium deal is not in the plutonium deal. It's not in the plutonium deal.
Okay.
This is an analysis of what Rosatom wants.
You're very. I'm going to end it here. You're very confused.
I'm not.
Everyone,
the words mean shit.
Yeah, the words mean that they're going to get our uranium. That's
the deal
what I've been saying all along.
the fucking deal is, like, you can Google uranium price history, and you can uranium, while it's a controlled commodity, because
I understand there's a lot of uranium. We don't give ours to Russia until Hillary signed that deal. In 2010, she signed the deal that gave our uranium.
No, the deal was about plutonium. And I mean, I could tip over a chair, but then that would end the show again.
Okay, Rick. Plutonium is made from uranium.
That's right. But this is plutonium that already exists. And how do they get rid of it?
Get rid of it. But as part of that deal, Rosatom gets to enrich 25% of our uranium.
No, that's not in the deal.
It just says that in the UN analysis.
No, it doesn't say that.
This is the analysis of that deal, Rick.
It's not. It's an analysis of what Rosatom wants to do business.
Right, and that goes into effect 3 years after the deal's been signed.
So it doesn't talk about the deal. It says Russia wants to get commercial access to the U.S. enrichment market after 2013. Well, that's not in the deal.
Okay, it is in the deal. This is an analysis of that deal. And when they get control of the commercial access, what that means is we ship them our uranium.
No, all right, so I stand correct. So, under the deal, the Hillary deal, Russia supplied 44% of the enriched uranium that we used.
Fine.
And now, after 2013, they want, after having supplied, they were supplying us with 44% of the uranium we needed.
Completely irrelevant.
Now they want us at least have 20 to 25% of that market.
It's not that market. It means they get our uranium from our mines, which they can then, whatever it is, enrich or play with, whatever they're going to do. But the point is, according to U.S. laws, until 2010, the United States was not permitted to give its uranium to the Russians. And that's what this changed. And it just so happened that her campaign manager got $250,000 to lobby for Uranium One, a Russian company.
All right, so the deal now we're almost done.
Sure, I just want to add something to this thing.
All right, so the deal is, according to this analysis, Rosatom, the Russian uranium company, wants to make money by enriching uranium and selling the enriched uranium to the U.S.
Maybe.
That's what these words say.
I know, but those words are not necessarily what the Russians are going to go ahead and do after they get a hold of our uranium. They may keep it and do whatever the fuck they want with it.
But the deal is that
we do not trust Russian companies. That's why we don't do deals like this.
Except
we don't give them things that they can play with and do bad stuff to. That's the whole point.
Well, the deal is that the world uses 150 million pounds of uranium a year. There's plenty of uranium being used and being moved from place to place and being sold as a commodity.
Right, but we don't give the Russians ours. That's the deal. That's what we've had up till now. Now, if you would like to be, I thought you were very against Russia. It turns out that you're colluding with Russia. Now, the whole thing's become absurd, right?
No,
now you're a big lobbyist for Russia.
No,
just like this guy.
No, you know what I half an hour ago I said, uranium one is a dumb conspiracy because you guys, the people, Hannity et al, who don't know physics and they're just not smart. I gave 2 reasons not to trust Russia at the top of this thing. The 2010 deal, which had been negotiated, started for 8 years under Bush, and then for another couple of years under Obama, and then there was a previous 1993 there was negotiation starting in 1990. This thing had been negotiated for a long fucking time, and if you wanted to yell about the deal Hillary signed, then you could yell that we're letting Russia get rid of its plutonium. We're getting rid of a lot of our plutonium, and we're letting Russia, so long as Russia gets rid of its plutonium. So people should be, if you want to yell about something, you should be yelling that we're getting rid of our precious plutonium.
Yeah, we shouldn't do that.
Yeah, but nobody,
especially if we can't prove they're getting rid of theirs.
So, but there's verification measures built into the treaty.
Okay.
But another thing that needs to be verified is that what Russia is doing with the extra plutonium it's making in breeder reactors. So there are 2 things that you guys should have been yelling at, but you haven't been. Instead, you've been yelling about this fucking stupid uranium one thing. So,
well, I agree that Obama and Clinton signed a terrible deal that was somewhat traitorous.
No, that's bullshit, because this thing had been negotiated for 9 or 10 years, and
what was it? What was started under the Bush administration was simply a way of reducing the amount of dangerous plutonium in the world. That was all. This thing that Hillary Clinton turned it into was helped through by her campaign manager, Podesta.
No, see, that part is garbage. It has been thoroughly debunked.
What do you mean it's been thoroughly debunked? I have his signature. I have Podesta getting $250,000 right here. Here it is. $250,000 goes to Podesta.
All right, fine.
As a lobbyist for Uranium One.
Okay, fine.
Right
so
here.
Fine, but let's
why
move
does
on.
Why does the Podesta group and these 2 groups get $240,000 as lobbyists for Uranium One?
Because they were lobbying for the company.
Why was Hillary Clinton's campaign manager a lobbyist for a Russian uranium company?
Because they hired him to be a lobbyist.
Okay.
All right, so with that, let's move on to the next fucking thing. You got the last word, even though I think your last word is ridiculous.
I would just like to ask you a question. Do you believe, you think the New York Times is fairly credible? Do you know that the New York Times said that the Dossier was probably Russian misinformation? And
wait, how do we get on the fucking Dossier?
No, because the way that these debates go is that you never back down on anything.
Yeah, but neither do you.
No matter. Yeah, but I.
Oh, but you're right. Okay, he's right, so he never has to back down.
Even when the Inspector General, see, when I was thinking about this, that the last person in America that thinks that the Uranium One deal was just great, and that Hillary didn't sign it, that she didn't sign it.
Find me.
Yeah. I have to find her signature.
You do, because
I just did.
You didn't. You found the signature on the plutonium deal years before.
3 years before the Rosatom was supposed to get a hold of the 20% of our uranium. It's part of the deal. It's all in the same deal.
It's not in the fucking
deal
deal
at all. You have no
all.
proof of that. I have the document.
You don't. That's a United Nations analysis of what they think this Russian company wants.
And
it's not in the deal. It's not in the treaty.
That is the consideration. When you have in a deal, all right.
So to go back, come on, we're done with that part.
This is my argument. that Rick can't accept reality. That even when you find the signature, he says, "Oh, that's not the signature on
It
the
is.
document."
There's one. We found
And
one
then-
signature
and
on a
then-
plutonium
and then-
document 3 years before
That is
uranium one
that
was
is the
supposed
same
to.
deal. That is the
It's
deal.
not this. It's
That's the deal. There are not two deals in 2010. One for uranium, one plutonium, and one for uranium, one gets our uranium 25%. There aren't two deals. I'm going to go way out on a limb and say that in 2010, when Hillary signed the deal that Rick accepts, that was the deal that is the deal we're talking about.
but there is no verbiage
That's
in.
because they didn't send me a copy of the document, but that's not.
Just real quick, just to make the argument fair, right now, like for example, Pelosi has said it's all you need is allegations to like impeach, and like with Kavanaugh, all you needed was allegations, and that is kind of like what the political game is right now. So is it safe to say that Lance's argument is right because he's alleging that the deal was unfair, so therefore you kind of have to prove that it's not rigged?
Well, all right. So,
Lance, would you agree?
like what our director is you have a thing, and I don't necessarily disagree that that currently we're in the middle of an impeachment, and there were the Kavanaugh nomination and confirmation was super messy, and our director believes that regardless of the personal characteristics of the people involved, Kavanaugh, Trump, the people around them, that this is a ratcheting up of political awfulness and the relying on unfounded shit, and that from now on this is going to be the way American politics will be permanently. And what our director is saying is that and is asking basically, do we really want to live from now on in an environment where everything's based on allegations rather than on substantiated shit? Right?
Mm-hmm. That's basically.
All right, so I guess the idea is change the subject, which I'm going to. The problem is that the House has made an allegation, and the concern that I'm not saying anything new. Every American has probably thought of this if they paid any attention at all. But basically, in order to impeach the president, you simply have to get control of the House and then 67 votes in the Senate.
Well, no.
So
no,
what-
hold on. The president's impeached. So
Okay, in order to remove the president from office, in the future, what our director is saying is something that we've all considered, that now you simply make an allegation against the president, you use the majority you have in the House and the 2/3 majority you have in the Senate, and you remove the president. So, because there's no particular crime in the House's articles, and because no witnesses were called for the president and no lawyers, nothing has been proven against the president, and what we're afraid of is that whenever the Congress gets the numbers, they'll simply remove the president. And
that's the argument our director is making.
right, and that's the argument that everybody's making. That's the problem. So what's happening is this: tomorrow,
Not
The
tomorrow
Senate-
because it's Martin Luther King Day.
the day after tomorrow, the Senate is going to hold a trial. This trial will be presided over by the head of the Supreme Court. Both sides will be calling witnesses.
Or
maybe-
trying to, depending on
maybe.
what the rules
Okay.
turn out to be.
And what they're going to try and do is hold the trial the same way that an American court of law would. In the end, it still depends on votes, though.
True.
So so that's the problem, is that that the Democrats really don't have anything, and they're simply going to try to use the majority to remove a democratically elected president.
In the alternative, you could argue that it's also the solution, because I don't know when, I mean, it's very rare in US history. I don't know that any party has ever, at least in the last 150 years, held a super majority in the Senate. We could probably look it up, but we're not gonna. But you need, for a partisan removal of a president, you'd need 67 senators belonging to the party that's not the president's party. I don't know if that's ever happened in history. And in fact, the two other times that there was an impeachment trial of a president in the Senate, the president was not removed. In Johnson's case, they fell short by 1 vote, and in Clinton's case, they fell short by more than a dozen votes on each of the articles, mostly along party lines.
Well, that's the problem, though, is that these crimes should be so clear that it isn't going to be about party lines. And when the House sent these articles over, there were virtually no Republican defections. It was completely party line. And that's not the kind of America I want to live in.
Well,
this is just one more of the evil things. In fact, the Democrats lost a vote. A guy changed parties in New York.
Yeah, another guy changed. But anyway, did you want to live in the way it was when Clinton was impeached? Because that was largely along. You were liberal back then.
I wasn't in favor of that, and I still wouldn't be. I don't think a sexual behavior should lead to perjury.
All right, so let's fucking go on to another subject that we spent a lot of time in the car talking about.
All right. But wait, I never finished my point. I just wanted to say, I heard this week on Hannity, and I had never really ran this home to you, that the New York Times said that the dossier was Russian misinformation, and the CIA said that the dossier was the equivalent of internet rumors.
Okay.
But you still believe in the dossier's veracity.
You know, a million times I've said, I think the word I've used a bunch of times is scuttlebutt, which is another way of saying rumors. I've never claimed that the dossier is 100% accurate.
Right, but...
And in fact, there are parts of it that seem super unlikely.
Okay, so my point is, this week, the FBI apologized to Trump. Did you know that?
No.
You didn't know that because CNN would never tell you that.
Also because...
Or Twitter would never tell you that. Because...
Also because I was just on fucking eBay buying cheap Valentine's Day jewelry.
The FBI officially admitted that they had spied on the Trump campaign.
No, hold on.
Yeah, they admitted it and they apologized.
So you gotta, when we break again, you'll show me the article.
It's okay. So again, I'm lying.
No, you're not lying.
Okay.
But sometimes you spin stuff.
No. This was an official apology from the head of the FBI saying that they admit. I'm repeating myself that they had spied on the Trump campaign.
When we break, you'll
and
show
they
me.
apologized. Now the point I'm trying to make is this: for 3 years now, you've been trying to prove to me that the dossier was a reasonable thing to use so that the FBI could do their duty to save America from Trump. And it turns out, nope, they were spying on Trump based on internet rumors, according to the CIA, and Russian disinformation, according to the New York Times.
Okay, so I guess...
So you were dead wrong for 3 years about that.
So when we break, you'll show me.
I'll show you right now.
No, because we're breaking.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
It's all right.